Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your Fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shameer Sachdev, and some of Fintech's hardest hitting marketers and leaders.
Welcome everyone to today's episode of the FML podcast. Today I'm joined by Shanae Peynado, Senior CRM Manager here at Growth Gorilla. Shanae, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hiya, thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking all about CRM, specifically CRM for Fintechs. But before we jump into that, Shanae, why don't you give us a quick overview of your background and how you've ended up here at Growth Gorilla?
I started a while back in kind of more general marketing after studying marketing management and market psychology and marketing at uni. So I really liked that, really got into like consumer behavior, kind of the marketing mix and kind of those kind of things there. And so when I joined my first role as a marketing executive, it was kind of really varied, did loads of different things for like sales teams, like making leaflets, organizing events, setting up webinars, getting feedback and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And then I wanted to be a bit more specialized just because I was all over the house. So then I moved into an email marketing role, and that's when I started to really enjoy email marketing. And then when I kind of first got introduced to CRM as a function, so kind of incorporating the entire customer journey rather than just one-off marketing campaigns. And I had a really, really fun time setting up the customer journey from scratch there. So there was no real CRM system set up where I was. There was a parent brand with 26 brands underneath it, and they were all receiving the same kind of communications. There was nothing specific or tailored towards like the different types of customers, the different products, different brands. So it was a bit of a wreck, as you can imagine. So I worked like from the ground up, building up what that customer journey should look like. It was B2B, so that was really interesting to understand how businesses communicate with other businesses, especially in terms of data as well. So got a lot of info at email addresses, got a lot of sales at a single company as well. But that was really cool. So I worked with a lot of account managers and field-based sales teams as well who had dedicated ledgers of customers essentially. So that was really cool to kind of understand that the whole B2B world, and touched on a little bit of e-commerce there as well for their smaller child company they had for more household customers, more B2C. So I did that for a couple of years and then wanted to get into more B2C. So then I moved over to a more specialized as well, strategic role. So I was a CRM strategist, and I focused solely on project planning, customer journey mapping, working alongside the customer data team and the technical team. So they had more specific functions in terms of building out comms at HTML and stuff like that, building journeys. And then the customer data team were more focused on who we were contacting. So I was able to like really use my brain to just kind of be a bit more strategic in terms of what the purpose was for each campaign. Worked on a lot of like new product launches, new markets and entries as well, which was really cool. Got a lot of experience in terms of like different markets, different businesses. And yeah, I'm still really enjoying it. Moved over to Growth Gorilla to kind of jump into a more managerial position. So now I'm able to like manage the CRM from a more senior position essentially, and kind of have a bit more of a decision-making role in terms of what client strategy should look like. So yeah, really enjoying it here so far.
Let's jump into that. I kind of like the topics I kind of want to cover today is, a very obvious one obviously is developing strategy. And then I want to talk a little bit about the technicals and the stack and choosing the right CRM stack. And then I want to also talk a little bit about the data and analytics and reporting and using that to make decisions. And then we can kind of then jump into sort of more, we can call them use cases and dive a little bit deeper there. I don't want to go straight into talking about platforms just yet. I kind of want to talk about just sort of building out the strategy bit first. So in an organization of any size, where do we start in terms of building a CRM strategy? What are we looking at doing? What are the questions that we are asking? What does that look like for you? How does that work in your mind?
So first thing you're looking at is what the product is or what the service is, what you're offering to customers, and gathering all the information that you do know about your customers. And to begin with, it might be very, very limited in terms of, there's a need or a demand for the product or service you're offering. and you know their location, essentially, maybe their name, for example, but you want to understand your customer journey from a kind of conversion perspective. So from their awareness of your brand through to consideration, through to purchase, and then find where those communication points are with those customers. So obviously for fast moving consumer goods, you want to be targeting customers a lot quicker, a lot more frequently, a lot more often. But then you kind of look at your specific business and say, well, we know that, the average person will make a transaction every 3 months, for example. So you can use that as a real starting point to say, okay, we know we've got 3 months to kind of retain this customer. So yeah, it really does depend on your business, understanding kind of, purchase frequencies from a very, very top line, and then kind of setting those outcomes and goals that you want. And then I think once you start to do that, you can develop on it by doing things like gathering more customer data. So it might be more market analysis, competitive analysis, surveys with your customers and things like that, feedback reports. And you can start to use that to kind of like develop a more strategic CRM strategy. And then also doing a lot of testing, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about more a bit later, but you'll do like a lot of A/B testing and choosing different forms of communication, because you might find that your customer base responds a lot better to SMS than they do to outbound calls, for example. It's like a test and learn environment with CRM, but I think that's kind of the core of it. And one of the things actually that I probably should have mentioned earlier is that you want to have your very basic, very standard forms of communication. So throughout the customer journey, when you're contacting your customer, you want to keep them updated on things like progress of orders or transactions, progress of their onboarding, if they're required to make any actions on their account and things like that. These are all things that you want to make sure you have as like a very, very standard, and make sure that you kind of fill any gaps in terms of if, for example, your customer gets stuck in one part of your funnel, what have you got in place to kind of mitigate any sort of issues occurring from that? What have you got to kind of prevent you losing customers because of a bad experience or a break in the journey? So like, yeah, that's kind of like the groundwork for it. And then, like I said, you kind of develop on it, you build on it based on your analysis and on what you find.
Throughout that process in terms of developing strategy, and I suppose on an ongoing basis as well, what questions are you continuously asking yourself?
Performance, how is it performing? How's the CRM performing? And what's being driven? What's changed? What impact has the CRM had? Because I think it's all good and well having like a confirmation email set up or an opt-in kind of or a preference center, but what difference and what impact has that actually made on the bottom line? So I think it's always good to kind of use that as a steer to kind of guide your decision making.
So I just want to dig in a little bit deeper, because obviously with strategy, you've kind of mentioned, obviously you're continuously sort of building from the ground up. And I think that, like with anything, you can only plan so far ahead. And then that kind of leans into that point you made around sort of testing and learning and continuously optimizing. Let's talk a little bit about that. I think, the immediate thing that springs, I think, to most people's minds is testing subject lines and, maybe doing some A/B tests around that. But I've got first-hand experience in terms of seeing the work that you've done with our clients. Can you kind of talk me through your approach towards testing and give a quick overview as to all the variables that can be tested within CRM?
Yeah, so it depends on what method of contact you're talking about. So, of course, we've got SMS, push, email, call. And I think the main things that you should be testing on is frequency, timing, whether that be time of day or point in journey as well. Again, all of these decisions should be made strategically, and you could test pretty much everything, but you don't want to do too much testing at the same time. You kind of want to be quite purposeful with what you're testing and when. Try to do a few at a time so you can kind of use it as we know what the cause and effect is here. Because if you're testing too many things at one time, you're not sure which element is actually having the impact. So frequency, timing is one of them. Content as well is one. So again, you're looking at actual content within an email, but then subject lines as well. You can also test hierarchy of information. So things like putting a call to action button higher up, placing it maybe lower down. And again, with that, kind of goes into design a little bit as well. So looking at different types of colors you can use to kind of draw attention, looking at different types of placement, shapes, sizes, things like that. And essentially what you want to do is, we should have a main call to action and a secondary call to action for all kind of communications of customers. And I mean, this is mostly for email. For SMS, you kind of want to stick to one because, a text is only, a short piece of information. You want them to do one thing off the back of it. Either you want to tell them something or you want them to do something. But when you're looking at an email communication, it's good to have a main call to action and then have a secondary one as well if they're not ready to complete that main action. And also just to give customers a little bit of option as well. So you want to do things and test things that are going to drive those two main things. So the main call to action and the secondary one. So you're not going to start looking at kind of testing where you put your logo, if that makes sense. Because essentially you'll have your brand guidelines anyway. Where it's placed isn't going to have much impact on how the customer then kind of uses that information. And so, just being thoughtful about what it is you're testing. But I'd say those are the main ones: the frequency, timing, content, design, and I suppose order of information as well. So if you've got like an email series, like an education series, which a lot of companies do, kind of what order are you sharing that information in? Perhaps you're sharing too much too soon or too much of the more detailed and nitty-gritty stuff early. It might be better to start off really simple and easy, introduce your brand, and then work your way towards the more kind of detailed pieces. So I think that's probably the main ones.
I think that kind of leads us on really nicely to then talk about data. And I suppose that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, the two questions that you asked yourself. What's been the performance? What's changed? What data points are you measuring, are you looking at through the course of any campaign?
So it depends on a client-to-client basis. Some want to just, in general, get more conversions, like an overall percentage of conversions. So whatever percentage of inbound customers they get or leads. And then you get other ones who are really focused on getting roughly the same percentage of conversions, but they want to do it sooner. And the reason they want to do that is so that they can then kind of push for that repeat conversion sooner. So then, do you see what I mean? So that kind of, it does have a different type of effect. So you want to look at those differently. So data is really, really important. That's another thing that can be tested as well, actually. So how are you segmenting your data? And if we're talking like very early stages, you don't want to over segment your data because, good old saying, like beggars can't be choosers. You just kind of want to get the information out if it's marketing materials, and you don't want to kind of shoot yourself in the foot by holding back or withholding information and communications from customers who could be potentially, paying customers. So it's good to not over segment in the early stages. Once you've got a decent sized database, and once you've got a decent size in terms of the quality of your data as well, so you've got a lot of different fields of information on your customers, you can start to be a bit more picky with who you're sending communications to. And then this ties back in nicely to testing as well, because you can do things like dynamic content. So you can have the same sort of email template that's going out, but customer A's in Leicester, customer B's in London. So you can display slightly different information based on that. And you can start to get more detailed. And again, do it strategically, what's relevant to your business. If location isn't relevant, there's no need to do that. But looking at your business, looking at the customer data you have available, how can you kind of tie those together to segment your data as best as possible? And then, test it. See if there is a difference between kind of messaging customers who have gone cold for a month versus those who have gone cold for 2 months. There might be a big difference in that. So that's quite important.
That's fantastic, Shanae. I think we've covered, the fundamentals, developing strategy, testing, reporting, etc., looking at data. I kind of want to just talk about the use cases. So we service clients all the way from startup all the way up into obviously large organizations, and strategically and tactically, they're very, very different. I kind of want to just break that down for our listeners. What are the key ingredients? And I'm talking like sort of customer, journeys and emails. What are the key emails and points of communication that a startup firm needs to have in place? What's your absolute must?
I'd say look at all your transactional messaging first, because that's going to have the biggest or a really big impact on your customer experience. So for every transaction, there needs to be a reaction. If customers are opting into email, they're creating an account, they're changing their password, adding funds, there needs to be something for every possible action that a customer can do with your business, with your app, their account. You need to make sure that you have relevant comms to kind of confirm those actions. That would be like the kind of groundwork. And then you can start to look at more marketing material and more fun stuff, more salesy bits and stuff like that. I'd say that's probably the difference between one of the biggest differences in terms of use cases. So with our clients, the things that I work on with the larger clients or those that are kind of more further ahead in their journey, looking at things like GDPR and looking at things like the differences between markets. So at the moment, we've got a few companies that are operating in Germany. So they have completely different rules there with regards to sending emails. They have to be double opted in, which is a bit annoying on the company side, but it just means that there's an extra piece of strategy there that needs to be considered for. So, and, there's not really room for mistakes there because, businesses can be fined. They can get in a lot of trouble for sending email marketing when they shouldn't be or when they don't have permission to do so. So making sure that they have like a really solid strategy in place that they can trust and kind of let it run in the background and not worry about that is really important to them. Same with different product lines. So we've got a client who has product lines that are available in some of their markets and then not in others. So again, making sure that we're really clear and concise with the content that we're providing each of those customers, because it's the same brand, it's the same company that both customers know. But if we start talking about product B to customer A, they're going to either have a really terrible experience when they realize they can't actually use that product, or it's just going to look really bad on the business's part because it's false advertising essentially, and again could lead to some really like hefty fines or just general bad reviews and things like that. So that's probably one of the biggest things that kind of marks the difference for me between those clients.
One of the other things that kind of comes up regularly, and it's, I know it's a conversation that you and I end up having at quite sort of early stages with clients, is about platforms. And right now, I think, clearly HubSpot have really gone really hard on their marketing because, everyone and their mum and dad are using HubSpot. I won't pass my comments or judgment on the platform.
Oh, I will.
Publicly. I'm not a fan, personally speaking. But let's talk about, personal opinions aside. What sort of platforms should, a startup be looking at and using versus a scale up versus, a more mature, larger organization?
You can kind of look at it in terms of any sort of even personal software. If you're a designer just starting out, you're not going to need like a full singing and dancing kind of Adobe platform. You can just start with, one of the more basic ones. Again, looking at your functionalities. So most platforms will offer the ability to collect data from your website and send emails and set up some basic customer journeys in terms of trigger this email when this event happens, wait for this period of time. If this certain action hasn't happened, then send this, for example, or exit them from the journey, whatever it might be. I think there's no need to over-engineer in the beginning, especially if it's like a concept to you, and there's no point paying for functions that you don't know how to use or you don't have the kind of capacity to use at the moment. You can always kind of move over and upgrade as time goes on. HubSpot, I think I started off not being such a fan of HubSpot, if I'm honest, but the amount of clients that we have on HubSpot, I've kind of been forced to just use it really regularly. And actually, do you know what? The functions of it are actually good. I do have to give them that. They do have good functions there. It's just, I think from a price point of view, they're up there with the Salesforce, and I've worked with Salesforce a few times in the past, and Salesforce is very, very powerful. Is HubSpot as powerful as Salesforce? I don't think so personally, but it is very good. But they are, price point wise, they're very, very similar. So I think it's just looking at that. So looking at your budget, one of the things to bear in mind is that with CRM, it's an ongoing cost. It's going to be the same. Largely, some platforms will charge you based on how many contacts you have or how many emails you send per month, for example. But for the most part, you know exactly what's coming out of your pocket each month. You can budget for that for the next year, the next 3 years, 5 years. And then what that means is that you really have the power to use it to the best of your ability to make the most out of it. So obviously, the more campaigns you set up, the more conversions you're going to get. The better your testing is, the more conversions you're going to get. And that's not going to cost you anymore because you've already accounted for that. So those conversions are just going to be added on top of profit. So I think that's the benefit that you get out of email marketing that you might not get with other kind of more traditional forms of digital marketing.
When you first joined Growth Gorilla, you made that point to me. And it never occurred to me. I never thought of it like that. And I know that now when we go speak to new prospects and clients, you kind of always say that, and it's always like the penny drops. It's a flat cost that's scalable. It only, it becomes more cost efficient the better you implement it. Whereas obviously with paid and performance, if you want to scale, you've got to spend more money. But with CRM, if you want to scale, well, you just got to be more clever with your
just spend a bit more time on it.
Yes, more time, more data. I mean,
Yeah.
But even your running costs for your individual running the programs is relatively static as well, which is especially I think in the environment that we are in at the moment, where there's this flight away from growth at any cost, and now it's about measuring ROI. For me, CRM for I think pretty much every organization that's out there should be a priority, right? Increasing those activation rates, increasing those retention rates, using it as a method to get referrals, etc. I kind of want to just not quite switch streams, but I almost touch on one of the points you made a little bit earlier. Obviously, you're talking about one of our clients who's running activity in Germany and looking at the double opt-in, etc. Obviously, with a lot of our clients, they're in multiple territories, multiple countries. Technically, we've got to think about what CRM system needs to be in place for managing multiple territories with the language considerations, etc. But I kind of wanted to also ask you about your approach with dealing with a client who's in 2 or more countries. Actually, without giving any names away, if you can kind of touch upon that other client that has 3 different locations that they're in, and therefore with products that can't sort of overlap, and how you approach something like that and ensure obviously that you can optimize campaigns like that and get the most out of their customer bases.
The key thing so the first part of your question was looking at clients in, for example, double opt-in in Germany. Luckily, they have 2 websites. So they have their English website and their German website. Failing that, there should always be, kind of the German option where it kind of just switches over to German language if they're not 2 completely different websites. And then essentially the key thing for that is making sure that your opt-in form is linked to the right data point in your CRM, so that as soon as you've collected that customer, you know exactly who they are and where they are. That will save a lot of fights. So I'm working with a client at the moment who hasn't properly collected data. So we're now retrospectively having to go back and tag these customers correctly because we haven't collected opt-in and we haven't always got the location correct, which means that we're actually stuck and can't send any forms of marketing to these customers. So it's a bit of a sticky situation. So I think kind of setting yourself off on the best foot forward is always the best solution for that. And then looking at, so we've got a client, like you said, operating in different markets, and their kind of product changes, their product offering changes based on customer location. So again, one of the things that I'm using with them at the moment is dynamic content. And again, having that data is super, super important, because dynamic content means absolutely nothing if you don't know what it's dynamic to. So we've got customers who are located in, country A, and we're going to send them information about how to onboard with this business, which is a completely different process versus, customer in country B, who it's a slightly different or slightly longer onboarding process and has a lot more moving parts to it. It is basically like creating 2 separate strategies, but in terms of implementation, it's a lot simpler. You don't have to have 2 completely separate journeys running or, duplicate every campaign you've got going. If you can use dynamic content, then it's a pretty easy way to set up, a single campaign, but the right comms are going to the right people.
We've been talking a lot about emails effectively, and you touched upon, SMS, for example. I'd like to spend a bit of time on talking about, the use case, for SMS in a positive way. I really, really like it as a method of communication. There was a period where it got a bit spammy, but it feels like, it's come under control now. And actually, now when I get an SMS from an organization, I'm quite glad they sent that to me, because I wouldn't have remembered otherwise.
As you were talking in my head, I was thinking, I bet their service messages and transactional messages, because like you said, they did get really spammy at one point. and people were just clicking the opt out, the unsubscribe, replying F you back to the sender number, hoping it gets delivered. So I think, SMS, I think that's one that's really got to be used quite carefully for that reason. Majority of the clients and businesses I've worked with use it very, very specifically for important updates and reminders. So if something has a time limit on it or is time sensitive, SMS is a really good way to kind of directly get your customers' attention. Most people have SMS notifications set up versus probably less people have an email notification set up because they get so many throughout the day from work, from their personal, from loads of different marketing brands as well. SMS is very, very direct. Great to use for those, like you said, those one-off reminders, like, for example, your payment's coming up in a couple of days, OTP code is expiring, click here to confirm your account or whatever it might be. So SMS is really, really important, but I would say it's a lot more direct, it's a lot more sensitive, shouldn't be overused. And I try to refrain from using it for a lot of like marketing or salesy communications, if I'm being completely honest. It's not really cute. I think like Domino's does it a little bit. They'll send you a text message saying we've got a 2-for-1 offer at the moment.
The whole country must be opted into the Domino's one, because I don't think there's anyone who doesn't get that 2-for-1 on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a bit hit and miss. Again, depends on your kind of customer audience. Always good to kind of test it, see how people respond to it. If as soon as you see your unsubscribe rates going sky high, get rid of it. Or as soon as you start to see a drop off in sort of people following up on activation codes or time sensitive messages, it might be time to kind of change up the strategy a bit to not include so many marketing communications. Just because if people know, it kind of, without telling people, you don't have to tell your customers, we're only going to send you an SMS if it's really important. You don't need to say that to them. But if you do only send them an SMS when it's really important, they'll automatically know that. So as soon as they see you pop up on their phone as an SMS, it's, oh, I must look and see what that is. So I think that's,
Yeah, I was going to say that's so true. So actually, the company I was talking about earlier is Capital on Tap, and they do exactly that. I only get messages from them when it's of significant importance, payments, 6-digit codes, reminders, etc. And they're not spammy at all. And yeah, like you said, when I get a message from them, I always check, right? But then, there's very few text messages I won't read, in comparison to emails.
There you go. And I think what we don't want to do is start to damage that reputation for SMS by making it become a kind of marketing platform, because then people will just kind of start to, like you said yourself, they'll start to check it less or think it's of lower importance.
And I don't know if I'm the odd one out, but I don't actually text anyone anymore. I just use WhatsApp. And so therefore, whenever I get a text message, it's usually a service message from some sort of provider. It's almost like they've got their own inbox now.
If I scroll through my message inbox now, it's literally like OTP code, verification code, reminder of this, reminder of that. It has become that. That's why I think a lot of CRM platforms are now integrating with WhatsApp directly.
That's interesting. So I suppose obviously WhatsApp being a Facebook property, and this is maybe something we can explore on our next team talk, but perhaps leveraging WhatsApp with the meta properties and performance marketing and kind of all of that. I think that'd be rather interesting. I think what I kind of want to end on really is when you first joined, you sort of came in and you took over the department. You were reworking all the sales material for us. You pulled these 2 slides together. That was CRM, the benefits to your business and then benefits to your customers. And I was wondering if you could just take a few minutes and just take us through those, because I think that there's some benefits on there that are overlooked or not considered. And I think that'd be really, really useful to our listeners.
Yeah. So if I remember off the top, there was 3. So one of them is, I think we've kind of touched on it already during our chat. So it's keeping your customers informed and updated. So they always know what's going on with an application process, with an order, with a transaction, with changes. It's always really important. So that's the kind of groundwork piece that I was talking about earlier on, making sure you kind of have that solidified. So the second one is brand trust. So this ties hand in hand with the first one that I mentioned. But what you also want to do is keep your customers updated with how your business is going. So that means letting them know about new sorts of functions, new products, new offers, and sharing customer stories and reviews with them. And what this can do is kind of solidify your brand in your customer's mind, lets them know that you're consistent, that you're secure. And the fact that you're sending them very frequent or consistent messaging lets them know that you're for real, you're solid, and that you can be trusted as a brand as well. And then the last one, which is probably my favorite one, is a sense of belonging. So creating that community piece. So it's always good to remember, if a customer has opted in to email marketing, it's because they want to hear from you as a business. And they want to hear from you as a business because they're really interested in your business and what you offer to them. It's great to kind of create that community and allow them to feel a part of it. So especially for startups, it's really good to get feedback from customers and allow them to help you shape your business, because essentially that's who you're servicing and that's who you're making it for, right? You know, as humans, we want to belong. So becoming a group always helps us to feel like we do belong. So I think businesses really do have that in the palm of their hand when it comes to CRM, because it's a very direct form of communication. You know, it's not kind of just like an ad passing by. It's straight to your inbox. 90% of people, it's going straight to their phone and they're seeing it, right? And that way people can stay up to date with what they're interested in. If it's kind of, you know, a new form of ethical banking, or if it's a new way to send international payments, whatever it might be, your customer base is interested about that. So share that with them, industry updates, competitions, you know, let them know about what your competitors are doing that you're doing better, or what you're doing that they're not, for example. You know, like, it's a really good point, a really good time to kind of show off, share that kind of passion. Startups are very passionate by nature because, you know, it's a small group of people with some common interests. So it's a really, really good time to sort of share that with your customer base. So that's one of my favorites.
The benefits for business, I'll quickly rattle through them because we've actually touched upon them a little bit earlier on. But as you mentioned before, fixed cost for an email service provider. So therefore, it's scalable. You know, resource, you can set it up once and automate, and then direct to a user's device via email, SMS, and push. And we've just talked about the benefits of those. And then time-wise, it can be really efficient as well, because brands spend a hell of a lot of time putting together creative for paid ads and out-of-home campaigns, etc. But actually, a lot of that can pretty much be repurposed and implemented into your email campaigns.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another benefit of that as well is that your emails can stay running for a lot longer than your ads do. So, you know, ads are kind of faster moving. We're changing them very, very frequently in terms of copy, in terms of placement. And there's also that kind of whole piece in terms of cost, which you have to make sure that you're navigating well. With email, like you said, you set it up once, you automate it, and it runs indefinitely, which means if you've got like a static offer for all new customers get their first transaction, you know, kind of remove the fee for brand new customers, then you can just keep that in your email for all new customers, so that you set it up in January, in December, you've got a brand new customer, they're still seeing that offer, they're still making the best of it, and you don't actually have to take it down. So yeah, so it is really, really powerful.
Shanae, that was really insightful and I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Let's finish as we always do on our quick fire round. What podcast do you have on repeat right now?
Shits and gigs.
I was listening to that earlier, and they
Yeah.
Yeah, they just kill me every time.
They're too good. They're so good.
It's basically just one guy reading stuff off Twitter and the other guy just laughing at it. That's basically what it is. But it's very,
pretty
very
much.
funny.
Yeah. I can't get enough of it, if I'm honest. Yeah.
What's your favorite fintech app?
I'm going to be really boring and say PayPal. Does that count?
Yeah, that counts.
Because I think because I trust it so much. I don't know. I trust it so much to just, you know, be secure, keep my information, keep my money safe. They've stepped out and they're now offering like 0% credit and stuff like that. So yeah, I think PayPal's done a really, really good job with their business. And I'm not like an avid user of it, but when I do use it, it's without a second thought. Like, I don't have to worry or question or anything like that. It's like, yeah, I think they're really, really solid.
I rotate, but my current one at the moment is Capital on Tap. I absolutely love them. Yeah, I mean, the app is a little bit clunky, but the overall proposition and the benefits and stuff are brilliant. They're really, really good. What books are you reading at the moment, or what would you recommend?
I'm not reading any at the moment, but I've got Stephen King, If It Bleeds, on my shelf. I'm looking at it right now. It's been sat there since Christmas. I put it on my Secret Santa wish list, and I got it, and I haven't read it yet. So yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Because we don't commute anymore, that's why. So we're not sitting on the plane reading anymore. Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly,
It's kind of killed that. And then what's one thing that I haven't asked you that perhaps I should have?
Oh, do I like my job?
Do you?
No, I hate it. No, it's great. It's great. Well, if I'm answering it now, yeah, I do. I really, really like the job. Agency's been pretty new. It's, it's my first kind of agency side role. So in the beginning, it was like kind of, finding my feet sort of thing. Definitely in the mix now. Enjoying working with such a wide breadth of different customers and different brands. And somehow, although it is fast-paced, it's still not as fast-paced as working for a huge company, because it's a lot more focused, if that makes sense. So the clients come with very specific needs, very specific problems that need solving, and we can solve them for them, rather than it being everything all at once. So yeah, I quite enjoy that, because I think when you're working client side, you're working for the company, you kind of get lost in everything. You get lost in all of the company's kind of goals, OKRs, quarterly, whatever. And then you're trying to do too many little bits of too many different things at the same time. So yeah, I'm quite enjoying that at the moment.
Shanae, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been great.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.